so that I can very easily send the recording to anybody who wants to see it. Because our purpose on this particular product is it really doesn't ever have an end. It'll stay with everybody. We're going to stay with you all the way through the other end of the journey. And the way we do that is the way we provide value is we help people understand all the complexities of this system. And I'll give an example of that as we get into today's lesson of what that means, what you have to know. Because it's one thing for Congress to legislate something, or the Attorney General to say something, or the President to sign a law. It's a fundamentally different thing to get the Bureau of Prisons to exercise the will. And so there's a lot of times that people have access to opportunities, but they don't know what levers to pull. They don't know what they can do to accelerate prospects for relief. And so we try to offer that information that we get not only from the personal experience of everybody on our team, and you can see the different members, some of the different members of our team on here. In fact, we're the majority of this room. There's Justin Paperny on my screen, he's in the upper left. There's Taylor Evans up on the right. There's Sam Mangal, who probably everybody has spoken to, there in the middle. And then our partner, Lawrence Hartman, who's just a great asset and a manager for us. He's graduated from Columbia Law School and has real great product knowledge of what we offer. And my name is Michael Santos. If I haven't spoken to you before, I was in prison for a quarter century and learned a lot about that great labyrinthine that we call the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And I try to share as much as I can with as many people as I can through our nonprofit, which is Prison Professors. Please use that as a resource. So here I'm now going to start sharing my screen so that I just have it on the recording, but each of you should have access to this document here that I sent yesterday. If anybody hasn't been able to access it, the link I will drop into the chat of our Zoom call right now, and you could just click this link that's in the chat. And if you can't access it, I think it will ask me for permission to grant access, and I'll grant access to anybody. So, because all this is public information. But today we are going to talk about the importance of preparing before surrendering. I've got a lot of things in my way here. Let me see if I can get them out of the way. There we go. We're going to talk about preparing to surrender, and everybody now knows how to join. We host these programs every week, and we want people to use them because there's a lot of information to gather. And on these weekly calls, we're going to follow kind of a format. Initially, we're going to help the people that are coming into this product understand what it means to surrender to prison. But that's kind of static information that applies to everybody. So we're gonna present this series, and it'll probably be more than once a week, but we'll always send a recording. So if you don't have time to watch it, we'll send you a recording of it. But after this, we're going to provide much more specific content. And even though while you're in prison, if you're in prison, you're not going to have access to these videos, we will always produce the content in a PDF format, publish it on a website. Your family can look at it. And then twice a month, we create a newsletter that we send into the prison. Because, right now you're out here and you've got access to the internet, but when you get in there, you don't have access to that information. Right now you have access to the internet, but you might not know where to turn. So we want to give you everything you need to have the most successful outcome. But again, today's program, we're going to focus primarily on the Bureau of Prisons. And in the document, I provided a link to the BOP website. There's a lot of information there that is very helpful for people to know in this pathway to self-advocacy. So the link is at bop.gov, and you'll see that I have some subheadings here that I want to cover, which is the Inmate Locator service, the facilities tab, and then how to find information on specific facilities. And I want to just do kind of a demo on that. So I will open a different tab on my website here. with hopes that you can follow along and see. If anybody, and at the end of every one of these sections, I'm going to say, okay, does anybody have any questions on this? So I've got the chat bot open. Anybody can ask a question. But this is the BOP.gov website, okay? And it is a government website. There's a lot of information. If somebody wants to find their registration number, they don't have that, their lawyer hasn't found it, you can plug that information in there and you can just plug in a name. There's my name, Santos. And even though I'm out of the prison system, there's my old number, 163770004. It just shows when I got released in August of 13. Okay. So you're always going to be on this system. And it's important for me to show people that information. If you have not yet come into the system and you don't have a number, you're probably already going to have if you just know your name, you can type in your name and it will tell you something like, what is your registration number? So I would encourage you, if you don't know your prison registration number, just type your name, your last name, as the Department of Justice is going to have it. And you're going to find your registration number, assuming you've already gone beyond the path of pleading guilty and so on. But it's important to understand this for somebody going into the system, because you should start thinking right now about your life, okay? I've got a whole life ahead of me, and I don't want what the government, the worst thing that I have done, I don't want that to complicate my life forever. Not everybody is like the people on our team that, I'm 100% transparent and open. You can say, yeah, the first thing I say to anybody, I was in prison for 26 years. Other people don't want to be represented by that. And so you have to be thinking, well, this is always going to be there. I'd better do some work. If I want to change that narrative of my life, I'd better be thinking about this now when I go in. And you can always see how I did it. You could figure out if you want to do it. If you want advice from somebody else, Sam will tell you. But everything I'm showing you, I would never ask anybody to do anything that I didn't do. And I am encouraging you, if you're going into prison, start thinking today about how you want to emerge, because there are collateral consequences that come with being somebody in prison. So you can find your name and your number. And I've just demonstrated to you, you never, it's Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. Okay, this is always going to be there. So figure out, how am I going to overcome that? Very important. The other segment that I wanted to discuss, I think, on this website is, and let me look at this here, was the information on facilities. So let's go back, because I can look here at locations and go to a list of our facilities, and you can see that this is a massive bureaucracy. Okay. Very important to understand the complexities of dealing with big government. Okay. Always remember that. Remember the great words of Ronald Reagan, who said, the worst words anybody wants to hear is, I'm with the government and I'm here to help. The more you can kind of internalize that, the more you can realize, wait a minute, there are going to be people in the BOP that are supposed to do something, but you'd better figure out how to do it on your own. And that doesn't only apply in getting ready for sentencing, in getting ready to go to prison, in getting ready to get out of prison, in going through the halfway house, and then in rebuilding, recalibrating your life. You got to think about all of this information all the time. And we show you how we did it. We encourage you to at least take that into your consideration and figure out, how am I going to recalibrate after this? When people are going into prison, that's all they think about. But I want you to be thinking about the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, and then figure out the complications that are going to come. But on this particular webinar, what we want to do is look at, say, well, where am I going? Okay, I don't know. And I don't know anything about where I'm going. And so, the greatest fear of the unknown is the fear of the unknown. Let's just take a look at any of these institutions. You will see, you click on a name, there's a prison. You're going to learn a little bit about the prison. And if you scroll down on the prison, you are going to find some information. You will also see that the prisons are not all the same. This one is at level 1 operations. And that means the Bureau of Prisons has some guidelines of what can happen. Level 1 is pretty much normal. right? Let's take a look at a different one, list of our facilities that is not normal. I don't know. Let's take a look
Miami. Go to Miami.
Oh, I'm going to look at all of it. All visiting at this facility has been suspended until further notice. This one is a level 3. Okay. So there are complications when it's a level 3. No visiting. Okay. That's because the Bureau of Prisons, as a bureaucracy, it has a director, it has regional directors, and then it has a warden. And the warden sets the path for every institution. He's the CEO. He has discretion. He's going to follow guidelines, but that doesn't mean all the guidelines are always going to be filed, which is why we have to understand what mechanisms, what levers can I pull to get the outcome that I want. So if we scroll down, we learn a little bit more about a specific institution, how to send things here. This is a very valuable resource for you to share with your family and friends and people on your advocacy group before you surrender. Okay. Then you can scroll down here and you can even see, oh, wow, there's the admissions and orientation handbook. It's a lot of information, but that information I think is important for people to learn from so that you kind of got an idea, how is the facility going to manage? And these are not all the same because the prisons aren't all the same, but they're defined by security level. Most of the people that are with us are going to minimum security. I had the pleasure and the privilege of serving time in high security penitentiaries, medium security prisons, low security prisons, minimum security camps, halfway house, and home confinement. So I know a lot about this system, and I want to share that so other people can get the best outcome. You can also see what's available in the commissary. That's the only store in the prison system. How do I use it? There's somebody coming in late. I'm admitting somebody late. I know that we've just admitted somebody else, but we'll send a recording so that you can cover the backstory of what we've already done. Right now, we're just looking at section 1 of our outline, and I was showing you how to access information in the Bureau of Prisons. So this particular resource, in my view, is insanely valuable. There are resources here like policies and forms, but it's kind of like saying, oh my God, it's overwhelming. I don't know how to find everything. And that's one of the reasons that we spend so much time at our nonprofit publishing information that you can use to help yourself at every stage of the journey. So that's what I wanted to share on this subject. And I want to go now back to our little guide and say, as I promised I would do, after I just finished section 1, where I've discussed the BOP.gov, I've discussed the locator, I've discussed the facilities, the handbook, the commissary. But I want to ask now, if anybody has any questions, this would be a great time for me to respond to any of those questions related to that. Otherwise, I'll keep going. But I'm always available to respond, and anybody's available, willing to participate, but I don't see any questions, so I'm going to continue, okay? And now I'm going to talk about another subject that I think is really important for anybody going into the prison system, and that's the BOP formulary, because, the U.S. Attorney may say the BOP has the best healthcare in the Bureau and in the nation, and we're state of the art. That's not typically the experience I had when I was going through 9,500 days in prison. I suspect that my team has also a similar experience. So we have to kind of understand the limitations of government healthcare. And what should I know if I need medication? Well, you would want to find that information before you surrender. And where would I go to find that information? Right here. I would go into this area here, and I would look under forms, and I would want to type in BOP formulary. Now, this might take some digging to find because there's going to be a lot of information on there. I think we try to make it a little bit easier on the Prison Professor's website. So you could always use this as a resource, right? If I went here and I just clicked on, some of these areas here, I'm going to try and find it in search and see how it works in real time. Formulary, and see what comes up. See, our tech team did. Top 10, what should I know before being admitted to prison for individuals? Right way, character reference letters. Shoot, my search bar is not working well, so I have to check with my tech guy because I know I wrote an article about the BOP formulary, and what I will do is on this sheet right here, I will create a link. So you will have that in the follow-up to this webinar that we're creating, because I want you to be able to check if you need medications. Check and see if the Bureau of Prisons authorizes those medications, and make sure it's documented that you need it, hopefully in your pre-sentence investigation report. If it's not in your pre-sentence investigation report, make sure that you get a letter from a physician that you can bring with you when you surrender. So step one is going to be, I got to put a highlight here so I can get a link for that. Make sure that you try and get a letter from your physician indicating that he's been treating and you have this, and then bring it with you when you come to the prison. But again, remember, the Bureau of Prisons there's 36,000 people that work there. They don't all follow their own policy. So if you encounter an officer that does not allow you to bring the medication, my recommendation, I encourage you to speak with other members of our team. My recommendation, you're always courteous, you're always polite, and you just say, would it be, because he's going to say, you got to send it home. If that happens, my recommendation is you say, here's a letter from my doctor, here's the medication, please leave it with the head of healthcare and the physician in charge at this facility, and let him decide. And if you're courteous, they'll generally respond to that courtesy. That's been my experience. So that's what I wanted to share about the BOP formulary and medications. If somebody has a question about that, please know that I'm going to respond. You can either leave it in the chat or you can type it. You can ask us. I will open this up for questions after I get through all of these different subject matters. But I don't see anything that is asking me for further elaboration. If anybody else sees something on there that I'm not seeing, because let me know. But I don't see anybody asking anything. So I'm going to continue with number 3. Telephone, email, and mail. These are really important to understand for you and for the people that you communicate with outside, because it's very different from, out here where you've got controls and structures around everything. You're going to have to submit a list, a phone list with all of the information. Who are the people that you want to call? What is their address? What is their phone number? What is their email address if you want to email with them? And then you're going to type that into a database, and those are going to be the only people you're allowed to call while you're in that prison. Fortunately, you can maneuver. So if you want to I think they only allow you 20. If you want to add more people, you're going to have to take some people off, and then you can put them back on. And it only takes a couple of hours to do this once you're in the system. But it's very different from living in society. So you want to let your team members know that there are complications of living in prison, and you need to understand it. Now, under the CARES Act, there's way more liberty in these areas than before the CARES Act. So you never know when the government's going to, we're not politicians, so we don't know what's going to happen with that. But what we do know is that if they take the CARES Act away and they revert to the old system, you're only going to have a limit of 300 phone minutes a month. You're only going to have, no, you don't have limits on email, but phone limits, yes, visiting, all these things get influenced by government policies. When you're in prison, you're really in a total institution. And if they love their policies and procedures. And the more you understand those policies and procedures, the better you can put yourself in a position to navigate your way to something successful. So when I was in prison, I had to really be respectful of my time. So I used my wife, Carol, who I married in a prison. I used her as my liaison to the world. So everybody would communicate with her. She would relate to me because I had limitations. And I had to do it. That's not possible for people who have children and, a lot of people that they need to communicate with. So my recommendation for you on this bullet point number 3 is come up with a plan. visualize what you want to do. If you understand the complications, okay, I understand it. I got a business to run. I've got this to do. Figure out the plan and then create a strategy that will go along with that plan so that you win. And if you have questions, please ask me the questions and I will give you answers. If I don't know the answer, I will get the answer and I will go to the highest level to get you the answer. And I'm going to show you how I do that. But I want you to know it's more important than ever for you to believe in yourself and to have the strength to get through this. And strength comes with knowledge. The more you know about the system, the more you can put yourself in a position to overcome it. That's what our team is going to try to give you, the strength to navigate your way through a treacherous storm and come back with your dignity intact and opportunities to run. And I see we've just got a question from Joe. Do you have to be vaccinated in prison? I'm not. Will I be segregated and will I not be able to attend RDAP? And will I be allowed to do programming? Thank you kindly in advance. And thank you, Joe, for asking the question. I think if you look down here, you'll see I have that question on here. And the reason that I have it highlighted is because I don't want to give you bad information. I'm going to ask the former director of the Bureau of Prisons on a call this specific question. And I've already reached out to him and said, can you get me this information? He was the director in charge when First Step Act got implemented. He was the director in charge when the CARES Act and the pandemic started. And I can get you accurate information. So please be patient with me. And I suspect that I'll have it within, but it's the 4th of July thing. So I would say by next week, I will have that information. I'll create a blog on it. It'll be on the website and it will be blasted out to every member of our community, including you. So I'm not going to give you anything I don't know. And I'm never going to ask you to do anything I didn't do. But let's continue here. I'm focused. That's telephone, email, and mail. Phone limits right now, my understanding is that you've got 500 minutes of phone time in the Bureau of Prisons and it's free. As long as the CARES Act is implemented, it's free. Email, you do have to pay for, but I can tell you in prison, email didn't exist until my last few months before I got out. But when it was there, I used it a lot. And my total cost of living in prison was about $600 a month. But that's because I was writing books and writing content and building my business from prison. Most people can typically fund their prison journey with less than $300 a month. So understand that you do have to pay for phone in a non-pandemic time. You do have to pay for email now. Mail, remember what I told you, you've got to bring that information of who you want to write because the Bureau of Prisons requires you to print your label of when you're sending outgoing mail from your outgoing list. So when you go, you want to make sure that you bring your list with you. In fact, I'm going to write this on this note. Bring your list of contacts with you. Okay? When you go to prison, I want you to do a couple of things. The 2 days before you surrender, have a typewritten list, put it in the mail and mail it to yourself so that by the time you get on the compound, they're going to give you that at mail call and you're going to have it in your possession. That's a backup plan. The more forward-thinking plan is to bring it with you, but understand you're at the will of the administrating officer. Some of them will not allow you to bring even a piece of paper in. So bring it with you by all means, just a white piece of paper with that information and have the information. And here's a backup piece of information. As another backup plan, bring an envelope, type on that information on your envelope, legal mail, legal correspondence, because they look at legal mail differently from regular mail. And if you say, I have an ongoing appeal or an ongoing thing, and then just put a couple of your court documents, not your pre-sentence investigation report, because they don't allow those in prison. So something like your letter from your counsel or something that your lawyer wants you to do, and he'll look at it and it'll say legal mail. And you said, my lawyer told me to get this done in the next week. So he asked me to bring this in. It's in a legal envelope. And on the back of one of those pages, also put your name and number. Okay, those your contact information. So I've given you 3 different ways to try to enter the prison with the information you need. Why did I do that? Because the BOP has a policy and it will expect you to follow those policies, but it doesn't necessarily mean the Bureau of Prisons is going to follow the policies. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can listen to my interview with the former director who said the same thing. We try to train our staff. They don't always follow directions. Okay. That's why this information of understanding how do I navigate my way through a storm, and come back successfully when I'm going to face roadblocks in every direction. The more you know, the more you can prepare yourself. If there are other questions, I don't see one. I'm going to go to number 4, which is admissions. So what's going to happen? Should we be bringing our papers? Also be bringing our papers. So Chad, I want to say about your papers, no. First of all, I don't know what papers you're talking about. I got a question that says, should we also be bringing our papers? I would recommend that you go in there. My always recommendation in prison for most people that work with our team is to be a submarine. I was the opposite of a submarine. I was open, litigious, aggressive, and deliberate, and focused on saying I was never going to be a model inmate. I was going to emerge successfully. And so everything I decided to do was in that direction. But most people have sentences of less than 5 years. And if you have a sentence of less than 5 years and you do well in self-advocacy, there's a good chance you're going to be home in 2 years. You got to do everything right. You got to pull all the right levers, and you advance your pathway along the algorithm. And that's important to do. But to do that, you want to be a submarine. You want to be underwater, right? Kind of invisible. And you want to have your periscope up, know everything going on around you, but try to be stealth and not be a target. So bringing papers in there of who you are and what your charges are and how important you are, all of that stuff is important outside. In prison, what you will find is it's a very different ecosystem than we know in society, okay? You're going to find people with authority positions are people that, would not be in an authority position outside. That's a nicer way of putting it, right? You're going to have people that, can't navigate their way out of a paper bag in society, having a level of authority in the prison. The more you understand that and the more that you know that, the more you navigate your way around that. When you don't understand that, you can expose yourself to problems. So I would not be bringing papers in about your legal case unless there's a valid reason. And I see no valid reason, because the litigation is behind you. It's not ahead of you. You've gone from the judicial branch of government into the executive branch of government. And under the executive branch of government, you're dealing with these bureaucrats. Just think of the Department of Motor Vehicles and the bureaucracy there and multiply it times 100, and you kind of have an idea of how the Bureau of Prisons operates. It's policy driven. It's not people driven, but if you understand it, you can influence your way through it. And that's what we're trying to give you. The short answer to my question, there's no upside to bringing your paperwork in. There's downside, but we'll get to that in a different subject. Let's just continue talking about preparing to surrender. And so what's going to happen? Admissions. What do? Okay. Typically when you're surrendering, I hate to say self-surrendering because that really sounds redundant. I don't know another way to surrender, but to self-surrender, but that's the BOP, right? You're going to find a lot of different language in there. So surrendering, when you surrender to the prison system, if you're going to a minimum security camp, you're going to go, it's unlikely you're going to surrender to the minimum security camp unless it's a standalone camp. So use an example of Duluth, Minnesota is a standalone camp. Alderson, West Virginia is a standalone camp. There's no aligning institution next to it. So then you would surrender directly to the camp. Most camps are adjacent to a higher security prison. And the higher security prison is where the staff invests its resources. So they're going to require anybody that's surrendering or anybody that's being admitted into the camp, they surrender to the higher security prison. And there are protocols in a higher security prison that don't exist in a camp. So don't freak out, because what happens to you there is temporary. If you're going to the camp, remember, it's temporary what you're going to experience. Here's what you're going to experience. Most likely, you're going to present yourself to the date. Some indifferent, apathetic staff member is going to say, sit over there. Because her job is to sit at the desk and answer the phones. And there's a lot of phone calls. And the first thing she says, is this call related to an inmate? And then typically they are, because it's family members trying to find out something. And so then they take special courses in, showing indifference and non-caring for the family. Make sure that your family understands that, and they're going to be in a better position to navigate their way through the bureaucracy. Then that person is going to direct you to go sit down someplace. And you may be sitting someplace for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, for half an hour. Your family member may or may not be able to sit with you, depending on the staff. But eventually, somebody from custody, the custody department, is going to come over with a file. It's going to be a red file. They're going to open that file. They're going to look at your name. You look at the picture, and then they're going to ask you some identifying questions. Who are you? What's your mother's maiden name? What year were you born? Who is your third grade teacher? Okay. Nonsense, sign of stuff just to make sure you're the right person surrendering. And then once they confirm it, they'll ask you if you have ID. If you have ID, hopefully you're bringing a copy of your ID as well. And let me go ahead and admit somebody else who's coming into our group. So we just got somebody else into our group. And again, for the new people coming into the group, we will send you a recording so that you get the backstory of this. And we're going to do a replay tomorrow anyway, if you want to be on the call tomorrow. But we're right now on the section of surrendering. Our recommendation is bring a photographic copy of your driver's license and your social security card. And at that moment, when you're being entered, ask, will you hold this in my file? Because that will help you later down the road. So the guard will probably accept it, put it in the file, and then say, let's go. And in 99 out of 100 times, because it's a secure facility, they're going to say, stand up and put your hands behind your back. And you've probably never been handcuffed before. So that can be traumatic for people, but it's temporary. It's about a 20-minute walk. They're going to put your arms behind your back. They're going to take you through this series. If you guys, though any of you are old enough to remember the old series, Get Smart, you're going to go through a series of what they call Sally ports, where a door is going to open. You're going to go into that door. The door is going to close behind you. They're going to say, inmate 7214, whatever, requesting permission to proceed. And then somebody in control is going to open another door, and you're going to walk into the belly of the beast. And you'll be handcuffed. But all they're going to do is walk you through a courtyard or through a hallway or through a corridor, and they're going to take you into the A&O department, admissions and orientation. No, strike that. R&D, not research and development, but receiving and discharge. And they take you into R&D. They put you in a cell. They lock you in a cell. The only people with whom you are going to be in that cell will be at the same security level as you. So if there's more people in there, don't freak out. They're not any more dangerous than you are. Okay. At least they don't have a criminal history of being any dangerous than you are. And they all want to get out. So that's a pretty simple environment, although it's stressful. So just understand you're going to be in a locked room, perhaps for the first time in your life, but it's temporary. And while you're in there, you should just say, okay, I know what's going to happen. And here's what's going to happen. That's what we have here. We're going through number 4. There's going to be this series of procedures. They're going to hand you a bunch of forms that you're going to self-report your medical condition, your background, your education level, like so many forms. It'll take somebody who's inexperienced at least an hour to get through all those forms. And then staff is going to take them, and then they're going to start interviewing you. A series of department heads will come in, somebody from psychology, somebody from medical, somebody from case management, somebody from custody. They're all going to come and talk to you to get in a sense of your mindset, whether you're suicidal, whether you're depressed. So it's very important for you to have a strong mindset during that period of time. It's going to be traumatic, but it's temporary, okay? It's temporary. So there's the great fear is the fear of the unknown. But if you know all of these things, then you're going to say, okay, I know I'm only in this situation for an hour. It's going to be anywhere from an hour to 5 hours, depending on the staff, right? Everything depends on the staff. So, but you won't be there for more than 6 hours, I should say. And so once you get all done, you're going to get your fingerprints. You're going to get that beautiful photograph that's called a mugshot. You're going to get an ID that's going to be like your driver's license that you have to have with you all the time. And then you are going to get this part that some people really find undignified. They're going to take you out. Somebody of the same gender is going to ask you to strip naked. They are going to do an inspection. That inspection is going to include looking in areas that you don't expect a stranger to look, but it's going to last a minute, okay? Just know that. It's going to last a minute. If you can get through that minute with your dignity intact, understanding this is no assault on your character or who you are, it's rather it's rather a part of our system of justice that I spend a lot of time trying to change. And I hope that you'll join us when you come home. But if you understand it, you get through it. If you don't understand it, a lot of times people object and they talk about you're violating my rights and all that nonsense, and they've got a response for that. It's called segregated housing unit. Not the end of the world. I did a lot of time in the SHU, but for somebody who's never been in prison, traumatic. So my recommendation, understand there's going to be a strip search, power through, and get to the other side. Because your objective is to come home with your dignity intact at the soonest possible time. We want to help you do that. So that is that surrendering process. And if anybody has any questions of number 4, I'm happy to respond. But that is going to take you through in normal times, what admission is. The next one you see, I have a section called quarantine. Now, we had a friend who was a physician, and we asked him, well, when's the pandemic going to end? He said, I don't know. I'm not a politician. So, you are in big government. You are in the belly of big government right now. And the big government has its policy. So we showed you earlier, I saw a question there. During intake questioning, I would want to say very little, but don't want to be perceived as a problem by saying so little. That's a great thing to think about. But I also we will be emphasizing the importance of that much later, particularly during the A&O session. So we'll do another session on that. And we'll, of course, invite everybody here to be a part of that group call as well. So it's very important. Again, that goes along with being a submarine. Be a submarine. Get through this, get to the other side, get back to your family, your career, your life, and figure out, how am I going to use this time to recalibrate? Understand that sometimes and this is institution by institution, because remember, it's a warden's discussion. Earlier in section 1, I showed you the BOP website, and I showed you that some institutions are level 1, level 2, level 3. If it's level 1, that means the warden hasn't declared COVID to be a big problem, and there will likely not be any quarantine. So you'll go right to the general population out of that after you've been processed in. If you're going to an institution that is a level 2 or a level 3, there's a chance that the warden will send you to quarantine. And you could be in quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks to 4 weeks. I don't think that's going to happen, but it can happen. And if it does happen, you have to know you're going to get through it. You have to know that let's prepare for that before. So how do you prepare? Well, some things that you might do is you might make sure that you have a very good reading list and you understand how to bring books into the prison system. And we will talk about that. I guess I can talk about that now. I won't take too long. I encourage you, make a list of books that you want to read and then give that to your family and friends who are going to send you books, but make sure that you're not sending them all at once, because the BOP, in its infinite wisdom, has a limitation on how many books you can have at one time, how many they will receive. So don't ever say, and the limit is 5, but to be safe, when people are sending you books, ask that they only send 3 books at a time, because you'll get the 3. Sometimes it takes a while, and you'll get multiple, or ask that they send 2 books at a time. Because if 2 people or 3 people send you 2 books, some of them are going to send back and you won't ever get them. You may not even know that somebody sent them to you. So have a list, have a schedule, make people send your books on schedule. Okay, that's one of the ways that you can prepare in anticipation, God forbid, you go to quarantine. But if you're in quarantine, it's part of the journey. A lot of people get through it. You will get through it. Okay, communication system. Okay, this is important because most people are going to get to the general population. When you get to the general population, you want to make sure that if you don't have access to the phone right away, which is a probability, you will meet somebody. There will be people that care for you. There will be people that want to help you along the way. And, I was that way, and there's 100 other people that way. They're going to see somebody that looks like them, talks like them, is friendly. They're going to come and say, how you doing? Let me help you. Here's a care bag for you, a toothbrush, some toothpaste, some essential things that you need right away. Is there anything I can do? I want to ease you. They'll walk you up because they were in that same situation. Is there anything? When they ask if there's something you can do, say, yeah, if you can talk to your family, could you have them call my loved one and let them know I'm okay? Because your family and your friends are going to be very nervous about you. And you want to get that message to them as soon as possible. If your family and friends don't hear from you or somebody within 24 hours, then we would recommend that we start an advocacy campaign right away. And we'll have a separate webinar on how to do that, that shows you different steps that we can take and different steps your family can take. So not to get distracted, we will have an advocacy webinar on that that's immediate, that you want to disperse with your family, your friends, your lawyer. If you don't have that, then there are people on our team. Sam, if you all know Sam, he's amazing. He can help with that. So these are things that you want to be thinking about. So that's the quarantine section. I'm going to turn over here to a question that I see came in. If I get designated to an FMC is a federal medical center, will I be in a camp? What will be my situation with where I stay in the FMC? Very good question. An FMC is a federal medical center. I want you to, you've asked a very big question, and that big question is going to go outside of the scope of this webinar, but I can tell you where to go. On Prison Professor's website, I'm going to just show you. We'll go back here. We were on question number 5. So I'm going to go back to the Prison Professor's website. Hope you can see it. Okay. I want you to always know where these resources are. Go to subject matter expert. There it is. Okay. You're going to see these interviews that I do with Chief of Probation. This is the one I want you to look. This is the Chief, former retired Director of the Bureau of Prisons. And in this one, I happen to know where it is. You click this link right here. And you go and you look here. It's not only going to be a video, but you're going to have the very specific questions I asked. And you can go to the very specific area where he responds to that. But in addition, you can go down to the different click and it'll take you right to the area of the page where I not only give information, but I also give commentary on what you need to know. So one of those talks about federal medical centers and the different care levels, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you understand this if you've got health concerns and you want to understand. And these are the types of information that I say, we will give you the information to help yourself. Nobody can change the past, and certainly nobody can change a big government other than to spread information on why we need a smaller government, in my view. Let's go now to number 6. what happens if I'm not vaccinated for COVID? That's a very good question that I received. And in fact, one of the people on this webinar asked that question. But do you see I have it in highlight? Check with SME. I am going to go ahead and interview an SME because otherwise I'm going to give you, not accurate, because there's 93 different federal judicial districts. There's more than 100 different federal prisons. There's 6 different regions. There's more than, wardens and regional directors, and they're all different. I've got to find the accurate information. And I wrote you, I'm going to interview the director of the Bureau of Prisons again and get that information. And at the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you some things that makes me a little bit enthusiastic about. I will tell you, if somebody has to go to federal prison and nobody wants to go, there's never been a better time than right now because of some changes that are happening. And I'll reveal more about that at the end of this webinar as well. I want to stay on topic here. We're going to go to number 7, which is the holding cell. We discussed that already about going in with handcuffs and paperwork. And I see a misspelling, so let's go ahead and collect that in real time. What should we do? Should make sure BOP has the paperwork. Oh, I know what I'm writing about here. Here's a complexity in the Bureau of Prisons. Sometimes people surrender, and the masterminds in Grand Prairie, Texas, who designate people, weren't fast enough to get the paperwork to the Bureau of Prisons. And when that happens, the BOP's response is to send somebody to segregated housing, and they wait there until the paperwork comes. Well, that's in camps. In higher security prisons, it's not that relevant. They'll probably put you on the compound because they know you're in a higher security prison anyway. But in a camp, they want to make sure that they have your paperwork because there's no boundary in a camp. Anybody can walk away. You're there on an honor system. So we want to find out what can we as individuals do before we surrender to make sure that the Bureau of Prisons has your paperwork, which includes your pre-sentence investigation report, your judgment order, and what's called the judge's sentencing. I forgot what it's called, but I'll have it on there, and I will get an answer when I talk to the director. So there's going to be a follow-up to this because as I was kind of preparing this document, I said, I need to get that information for members of our community, and I make a commitment that I will get it for you. And when I get it, make sure that you're turning into these webinars and you're also looking at our advocacy page because that's where I publish a lot of this information. So make sure that you're paying attention here. I want to get you that information so that before you surrender, you've got what you need, okay? Explain the holding cell and what goes on. I've already done that. And it's just, main thing is remember, this is temporary. You're not there for very long. You're going to get to the compound. And in the next webinar, we are going to talk about your first days and weeks on the compound and how do you adjust. Forms, okay? The Bureau of Prisons really works with a lot of forms, and your questions that you answer on those reforms are going to follow you throughout the Bureau of Prisons. A little story here of what I did when I went to prison is I didn't want to work in the kitchen. And because I didn't want to work in the kitchen when I was filling out my forms, I wrote that I had once had, what did I say I had? I said I had hepatitis. Now, I don't even know what hepatitis is. I was 20 years old, but I'd heard if you had hepatitis, they won't let you work in the kitchen. And I didn't want to work in the kitchen. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the kitchen. I just didn't want to do it. So I wrote hepatitis in the kitchen. And fine, when I got admitted, I didn't go to the kitchen. But then like 2 years later, I get called to the doctor and said, I see you had hepatitis. We want to put you on some type of a treatment. I was like, what are you talking about? I've never had hepatitis. So it follows you. And then I had to tell him, I lied on that form. I didn't want to work in the kitchen. And the doctor said, I'm throwing you in the hole for that. So, it's just, for every decision you make, there's a reaction in the system. Understand it, and then make a decision on how you're going to decide. So those forms can determine whether you get a lower bunk pass, whether you get a soft shoe permit, so you don't have to wear those clunky boots, but you got to wear tennis shoes. The best thing to do, if you can, is before you have a pre-sentence investigation report, talk with members of our team who can kind of help you pepper that report and have some influence on it. At the end of the day, the human being is amazingly resilient, and we find ways to adjust. I mean, who could think you could get through 9,500 days in prison? I found that you can. And so, you just want to get through it with your dignity intact and with opportunities to run. I got to go on mute because I hear my wife vacuuming, and I got to tell her I don't want that on the recording. So hold on one second. Okay, so now it's really important for us to just work through these things and understand that these forms are very important, and I want you to understand them. That's why we continuously publish information. I will have separate videos that I will share with members of our team that show the examples of those forms, and that you can kind of have an idea. Okay, I know what it is. What are the implications if I say this or if I say that, right? Right now, this is just the intro. So we can't go too deep, right? It's like there's encyclopedic information here. But I will have separate videos and forums to try and help people all along the journey. 9 interviews, why they're relevant, what to ask. Oh, yes. When you're in that holding tank, before you get back to prison, get to the prison, I told you you're going to have these interviews with staff members. Those interviews can be helpful to you. I think that you should go into them with the idea that staff members are just kind of like automatons. They're checking boxes and trying to go do their very important government work, which includes having coffee and taking a break. So they're just going to be checking boxes. But you want to try to gather information from those interviews. Try to kind of use all of your critical thinking skills to assess, is this a person of influence here? What can they do for me? Because everybody in prison has to have a job. And if you find somebody that you seem looks okay, file that information so that when you get into the next phase and you get in there, you want to remember that person. You want to remember that everything you say to them, you are creating a record, as evidenced by that hepatitis comment I made at the start of my journey. That followed me through 26 years, by the way. So be conscious of that. It's going to relate to your job placement, your bunk placement. If you want to make a kind of a self-advocacy plea there to get the right housing unit, to get the right bunk, I have always found it very helpful when the case manager comes and interviews you, or the counselor comes and interviews you, that you say something along the lines of, I'm really striving to be compliant and get through this without any disruptions. I'm just hoping you can put me in a unit that is not disruptive and with somebody who's of a like mind, because I just want to get through this without any problems. You want to get housed to the extent possible with somebody like Sam or somebody like Larry or somebody like Justin, who's on our team and they're well educated and they're not causing problems and they're not trying to, do something, because you can control what you do. You cannot control what everybody else does. If you know that, you are going to learn a couple of basic principles about serving time in prison. The most important thing about serving time in prison, in my view, get the right bunk assignment and get the right job assignment. Because if you can control that aspect of your journey, you can really put yourself in a position for a more successful, less disruptive time frame. Because I know that I'm not going to do anything wrong, but I don't know what this guy's going to do or this woman's going to do, right? This person may want to drink. This person may want to do drugs. This person may, whatever. You don't want to be around that. And so you've got to use your critical thinking skills. And sometimes that's hard to do because all of you are law-abiding citizens, and you got wrapped up into this wretched era of mass incarceration where the government thinks the best thing to do is incarcerate everybody. So you've got to figure out how am I going to deal with that? And if I know how to deal with it, then I can maneuver my way. And believe me, I believe that you can. Okay. I believe that all of you have built businesses and you've been successful and you've known how to read people and use discretion. And in this environment, discretion is crucial. So pay attention to these interviews and learning body language, understand who they are, right? What was it? Stephen Covey said, it said, if you seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. What are their goals? What do they want? And if I can understand what they want, I can put myself in a position that gives them the victory. If I give them the victory, I'm going to get what I want. Okay. What do they want? They're lazy. Okay. That's why they took government jobs. They don't want anybody that's outside of the parameter. Understand that and say, that's who I am. I'm not a troublemaker. I'm here to get out, serve my time and come home, and then navigate your way. But if you can maneuver your way to the right job and the right housing unit, you've gone significantly farther in advancing new opportunities, right? In one of our articles, I wrote about the mitigation arc, and I wrote about the importance of the decisions that somebody makes very early, how that influences decisions here and here and here. It's never too early and it's never too late to begin sowing seeds for a better life. But I want you to know this is one of those times that you are influencing the journey right there during those interviews with staff, because this is the only time in their life they're going to have massive influence over an important person like you. And the most important person here is you. So I want you to have that mindset when you go in, because it's traumatic. I'm not telling you anything, that you don't know in every other area of your life. I have no doubt that each one on this webinar has been successful in the past, and you engineered your pathway to success. You figured out how to get to the right schools and how to get the right deals and how to be in business. Okay. That required engineering. This does as well. It's just that when somebody's so traumatized of going into the system, sometimes they don't see there are levers here. I've got to pull those levers because these levers are going to put me in one category or one algorithm that's going to influence my future. So let's understand that. And then if you don't know what that means, ask a question and I'll do my best to film something that shows it. But we've got a depth and breadth of information on the website and we want you to use it. So let's go to number 10, search and clothing. I've already discussed that. So it looks like I didn't follow my own outline. I'm sorry. But we are about 9 o'clock. So we're cool on the time. Money and identification. The easiest way to bring money with you, like I told you, when I was in prison, I used to spend about $600 a month. I don't think it costs that much typically for the typical person, but you should have budget at least $300 a month, and the way you get that money is when you bring it, you could bring cash with you, but again, that's going to be institution by institution. Will they accept it? The best thing to do is have somebody on your family go to the Western Union, and I've got a link to it down below. I think if I don't know, yes, how to send money. There's a link where I give a full description of what it looks like. How do you do it? And then after you've been in the prison system, once you're registered in there and your name shows up, oh, this person's at Miami, you're showed up. Now you can send money through Western Union, and then it's 15 minutes. It's on the account. The reason that's important is because when the store only opens for you one day a week, sometimes in some institutions. So if you show up on a Tuesday and that's your day to shop, but your money doesn't come for a couple of days, you're going to miss the opportunity to buy toothpaste and toothbrush and tennis shoes and those kinds of things. So you want to have money in your account. I'd say that it probably takes at least $500 to kind of get the preliminary things you need, because you're not bringing anything with you, right? No watch, no shoes. They're not going to allow you to take anything with you. So you got to buy everything there so that you don't get, you're not doing without. So my recommendation is that you look at this video that I have here on number 16, and you get instructions on how to send Western Union. If you don't know how to do that, Sam's always available and he'll walk you through it. But you could also take a backup and bring a few $100s with you. The worst they're going to do is they're going to say, yeah, I'll put it on your books right now. If not, they're going to put it in an envelope and send it to your family, and they'll give you a receipt for it. Number 12, the identification I also spoke with you about. Make sure that you bring a copy of your driver's license and your social security card, not because you're going to have to do much driving while you're in prison, but because when you're going to home confinement, and we're going to give you like all the strategies to get to home confinement as soon as possible, you're going to need that information then. And it might be harder for your family to find it. So just put it in your file, and then they'll give it to you the day that you walk out. Vaccination card, if you're vaccinated, and I would recommend that you bring it with you. Remember, you're going into a government facility, so you got to think about that. I will get information for you with a description of what the government will do if you don't have it. Transition, moving the camp to the secure facility. Either you're going to go from that holding cell to the hole if you're in quarantine, and I told you, don't fret about it. We'll do another video on what it's like to be in the SHU and how you can be productive in there, at least how I was productive in there. But understand it's temporary, and you're eventually going to transition into the general population. So I want you to see it, and I want you to know it. So that's an important subject matter. The second is, what does it say there? Moving to the camp. Once you get to the general population, I think we need a full video on that. It's just too much to cover here. And I'm not doing Disney level production, so I'll try to make this rather simple. Disciplinary infractions. You know what? I apologize. I could have made this much bigger, which would have made it easier for you and for me. But I'll do that on the next one. Disciplinary infractions, what to know. The Bureau of Prisons is a real bureaucracy. It is a total institution. You go in there and you better think of myself, I'm a cog in a bureaucracy. And those administrators, when I was in prison, you were a cog in the bureaucracy. And they didn't care anything about you as a human being. You go there with that mindset and you understand I want to think about them. No staff member in prison is going to advance his or her career by helping you succeed. None. When I was in prison. When I was in prison, if I helped you and then you went and did something wrong, my career is over. So I'm going to be very conservative, and I'm not going to help anybody. I'm going to say no. They have a master's degree in saying no. Okay? You've got to know what your rights are. So when they say no, you can respond appropriately. And we'll have courses on that. We'll have information on that. I just want you to know, because this whole disciplinary infraction area, and I will have a whole section on that as well, is serious. If you get a disciplinary infraction in prison, it's going to obliterate our efforts, our mutual efforts, collaborative efforts to bring you home sooner. So I want you to understand the different series of disciplinary infractions, how easy it is to get a disciplinary infraction, because a staff member elevates his career not by helping you, but by writing disciplinary infractions. They're motivated to do that. They're motivated to do that because it shows they are caring about security of the institution. So the more I know that, the more I can make decisions in a deliberate way. And remember, success through prison is no different from success in any other area of your life. You got to define it. You got to create a plan that's going to get you there. You got to put your priorities in place on what do I got to do to execute on that plan. You got to have your tools, tactics, and resources along the way. And those tools, tactics, and resources are different at every stage of the mitigation arc. And then you got to execute that plan, holding yourself accountable. That's what we want to do. And that's why we're so glad that you're a part of our community. So at the bottom, and I give you my commitment, 100% commitment. I'll never ask you to do anything I didn't do, and I'll never lie to you. I will give you the information that I learned while going through a quarter century. And if I hear any member of our team saying something that, I think is a little too salesy, I'm going to step in and say, it doesn't work that way, right? This is prison, and prison's real. When you guys when you learned that you were the target of an investigation, you probably had a lot of lawyers giving you a lot of happy talk about what they couldn't do. And now here, boom, you're in our program. Okay. I want you to have real information because I believe in you. And I believe if you know it, you can navigate your way through it. I did it. I know you can do it. I've got some extra asset resources here that I'm going to create for you. And so I want you to look at those just to give you a little better understanding. I'm always modifying these things, okay? But these are just areas where you can go and get information. And before I close, I want to go for this webinar, and before I open it up for questions, if there are any questions, I want to turn over here to the one that I just did today. And I don't even think I finished it yet, but let me just look at it because this is an important one here. I just published this morning. I'm an early riser, so I get up early. I learned a little trick I learned in prison: get up, sleep when other people are awake, and wake when everybody's asleep. You do 26 years, it becomes a life habit. In any event, here is an article that I wrote this morning that I really recommend everybody going in there read and understand. I haven't developed the full article yet. You'll see I will. I did film the video, and I did put it on iTunes, and you can get that information iTunes or YouTube. But this is an example of somebody who wanted to get special consideration under CARES and get out early. He went outside of it, and it really backfired. You'll hear me explaining this in the video. And then he had to hire, a powerful attorney in New York or DC to litigate for him. And they litigated. And so you'll learn a little bit about that there. You'll also see, well, how did the BOP respond, right? So I give commentary and information because I want you to make good decisions. I don't want you making decisions because you think you're entitled to something. I want you to make decisions that are going to help you get the outcome that you want. What do we all want? We want you to get through this with your dignity intact and with opportunities to prosper, and we'll never mislead you. I'm never going to give you a bunch of happy talk about what's going to happen because you're going into a bureaucracy. The more you know, the more you're going to prosper. That's what I wanted to share with you guys this morning. If there are any questions, let me respond. I'm looking at the notes now. May I bring a good color copy of my driver's license instead? Yes, but just if you bring the copy, it could get lost, okay? It's the BOP. So I always say bring a paper, but if you've got an extra one, yeah, bring it because it will be very helpful for you when you walk out. Sometimes you walk out, you might not be in the same state, and you've got to go catch an airplane, and they're going to want your ID. And you don't want to give them your prison ID. So that's one of the reasons you want to have your ID. So yes, if you've got a copy and you don't mind that if they lose it, then yeah, just bring that and put it in the file. I don't see any other questions, but I just want you to know my name. I'm Michael Santos. I want to prove worthy of your trust. And I want you to develop a level of confidence in going through this journey. I want you to know the members of our team, Larry and Justin and Sam, who's gone, and Taylor. We've got a real depth and breadth of experience, and we're a resource for you. We will be with you, not only going into prison, not only while you're in prison, while you're on supervised release, and while we are working to get you early termination of supervised release. All of that is a methodical path, and we're going to get you the right information from the right people so that you can navigate your way to success. Unless there are any other questions, I am going to close this out, and I will send a recording to everybody along with this spreadsheet. But this is spreadsheet. I mean, the worksheet that I sent earlier that you should already have is a developing document, and we will continue to populate it. And then we'll provide the same level of information on the next call when I think we're going to go over the first day in the first month of prison. But this is at least once a week. Sometimes we do more. I want you all to have a fabulous 4th of July weekend. We're doing this on July the 1st. So although these are, evergreen kind of, I want people who are on with us today to have a great weekend and a great 4th of July. I'm Michael Santos, and on behalf of everybody on our team at Prison Professors, we believe in you, and we want to thank you for being a member of our community. Thanks.